The Galactic Council chamber fell silent as the holographic display flickered to life. Ambassador Crickstale of the Vexorian Empire adjusted his translator device and leaned forward in his seat. The room was filled with representatives from 17 different species, all gathered for the same purpose. They wanted to understand humans. More specifically, they wanted to understand why the war against humanity had become so strange. General Thoxven stood at the center of the chamber. His purple scales glistened under the artificial lights as he prepared to share his testimony. He had fought against human forces for 3 cycles on the contested planet of Verolon 7. What he had witnessed there had changed. Everything he thought he knew about warfare. "I was commanding the 42nd Division on the Southern Ridge," Thoxven began, his voice carrying across the silent chamber. "We had been fighting the humans for 6 standard months. The battles were brutal. Humans fight like cornered animals when they need to. They never give up. But that is not why I'm here today." He paused and looked around the room. Every eye, sensor, and optical receptor was focused on him. It happened during what the humans call a lull in combat. Our forces and theirs had reached a stalemate. Neither side could advance. We watched each other across a narrow valley for days. And then something happened that I still cannot explain. A young human soldier had walked into the throes, open space between the 2 armies. He carried no weapon. In his hands he held a small package. Thoxven had ordered his troops to hold fire. He wanted to see what the human was doing. The soldier stopped halfway across the valley and placed the package on the ground. Then he waved toward the Vexorian lines and walked back to his own position. "I sent one of my scouts to retrieve the package," Thoxven continued. "Inside, we found strange items. They were photographs of human families. There were small food items wrapped in colorful paper. There was a device that played music when you pressed a button. And there was a note. The note had been translated into 17 different languages, including Vexorian. It said simply, 'We do not hate you. We hope this war ends soon. Until then, we thought you might like to see who we are.'" The council members murmured among themselves. This was not standard military behavior. This was not logical. This was profoundly human. Commander Selen of the Korthax Federation was the next to speak. Her species communicated through bioluminescent patterns on their skin, which the translation systems converted to spoken language. She had led naval forces against human ships in the outer territories for nearly a decade. "My experience was similar," she said. "But it went further than simple gifts." She described an encounter that had occurred during a long siege around a human space station. Both fleets had been locked in position for weeks. Neither side could attack without suffering massive losses. The crews grew restless. The situation became tense. Then the human ships began broadcasting on open channels. They were not sending threats or demands. They were sending entertainment, music, comedy programs, stories. The Korthax crews started listening. They could not understand most of it at first, but the humans sent translation files along with the broadcasts. "My crew became fascinated," Selen admitted. "They started responding. They sent our own cultural materials back to the humans. Within days, the 2 fleets were exchanging everything from recipes to personal letters. One Korthax engineer had developed a friendship with a human technician through these exchanges. They had never met face to face, but they communicated daily. They shared stories about their families, their dreams, their fears. When the siege finally ended and both sides retreated, the 2 had exchanged promises to find each other after the war. That engineer is now one of the strongest advocates for peace in our government," Selen said. All because a human decided to share a song. The testimonies continued throughout the day. Representative after representative came forward with their own stories of human soldiers reaching out across enemy lines. A Dreknari ground commander described how human prisoners of war had befriended their captors. Instead of trying to escape or cause problems, the humans had started teaching the Dreknari guards their language. They played games together, They shared meals when possible. By the time the prisoner exchange was arranged, several guards had asked to be transferred away from combat duty. They said they could no longer fight against people they now considered friends. A Morvac's intelligence officer shared classified reports about human training networks that had developed along the front lines. Despite strict orders from both sides, soldiers had been meeting in secret to exchange goods. Humans traded coffee, chocolate, and music players. In return, they received alien medicines, technology components, and crystalline art from distant worlds. We tried to stop it, the officer admitted. We punished those who participated, but it kept happening. The humans seemed determined to connect with us, even if it meant breaking their own rules. The strangest testimony came from a Zealoth commander named Vorath. The Zealoth were perhaps the most fearsome warriors in the galaxy. They had been engineered for combat over thousands of generations. They felt no fear. They showed no mercy. They lived only to fight. But even they had been affected by human behavior. Vorath described a battle that had lasted for 3 days on a frozen moon. His forces had finally cornered a small group of human soldiers in a collapsed building. The humans were wounded, exhausted, and out of ammunition. Victory was certain. Then one of the humans had done something unexpected. He had crawled out from the rubble, holding a small bottle in his hand. He placed it on the ground between the two groups and shouted something that the translators picked up as drinks on me. The bottle contained a human beverage called whiskey. The soldier was offering to share it with the creatures who were about to kill him. I did not understand, Vorath said slowly. We were his enemies. We had killed his companions. We were going to kill him. And he offered us a gift. The Zealoth had not attacked. Instead, Vorath had approached the wounded human. He took the bottle and examined it. Then he sat down across from the soldier and took a drink. They sat together for an hour. The human knew he was going to die. The Zealoth knew he was going to kill him. But for that brief moment, they were just two soldiers sharing a drink. He told me about his home, Vorath continued. He showed me pictures of his children. He asked about my people. He wanted to know what we believed, what we valued, what we dreamed about. He was genuinely curious. When the hour ended, Vorath made a decision that went against every instinct his species had developed over millennia of breeding. He let the human go. He gave him medical supplies and pointed him toward his own lines. Then he reported to his superiors that the human had escaped during the confusion of battle. I have never done anything like that before, Vorath said. I have never done anything like that since. But I cannot forget that human. I cannot forget his smile when I let him walk away. The council chamber was absolutely silent. A Zealoth showing mercy was almost unheard of. A Zealoth lying to protect an enemy was impossible. And yet Vorath stood before them, confirming that it had happened. Ambassador Crickstall finally spoke. These testimonies are remarkable, he said. But I must ask the obvious question. Why do humans behave this way? What do they gain from trading with enemies? What is the purpose of reaching out to those who want to kill them? No one had an answer. The behavior defied logic. It served no military purpose. If anything, it weakened discipline and confused strategic objectives. From a purely rational standpoint, it was foolish. Then, a human voice spoke from the back of the chamber. Everyone turned. A human woman in a simple uniform stood near the entrance. She had been invited as an observer, not as a participant, but she had decided to speak anyway. May I? She asked. Ambassador Crickstall nodded slowly. Please. The woman walked to the center of the chamber. She looked around at the assembled aliens with calm eyes. She did not seem intimidated by their size, their weapons, or their obvious power. You want to know why we do this, she said. The answer is simple. We do it because we are human. She paused, gathering her thoughts. Humans have been fighting each other for our entire existence. We have created weapons that could destroy our own planet. We have committed terrible acts against our own species. We know what war is. We understand its cost better than anyone. But we have also learned something important through all those centuries of conflict. We have learned that enemies are not always evil. Sometimes they are just people following orders. Sometimes they are fighting for reasons they do not fully understand. Sometimes they are scared young soldiers who want nothing more than to go home. When we trade with enemies, when we share gifts across battle lines, we are not being foolish. We are being human. We are reminding ourselves and them that the war will end someday. And when it ends, we will need to live together in the same galaxy. She looked directly at Varth. Your soldier understood this. He knew he was probably going to die. But he wanted you to know that he did not hate you. He wanted you to remember him as a person, not just a target. And it worked, did it not? Varth could not meet her eyes. He stared at the floor in silence. This is humanity's greatest strength, the woman continued. We can fight like demons when we need to. We can be ruthless and determined and absolutely terrifying. But we never forget that our enemies are people too. We never lose our ability to reach across the divide and find common ground. Some of you see this as weakness. You think we're soft because we share chocolate and music with those who shoot at us. But you are wrong. This is how we survive. This is how we keep our souls intact through the horror of war. And this is why, no matter how many times we fight, we always find a way to make peace. She smiled slightly. Also, we are social creatures. We get bored easily. Trading items gives us something interesting to do during the quiet moments. A few of the ambassadors made sounds that might have been laughter. The tension in the chamber eased slightly. The woman returned to her place at the back of the room. The council members looked at each other with new understanding. They had come seeking military intelligence. They had found something far more valuable. They had found a glimpse into the human soul. The war would continue for another 3 years. Battles would be fought. Lives would be lost on both sides. But something had changed. The stories of trading and friendship spread throughout the galaxy. More and more soldiers began reaching out across enemy lines. The practice became almost universal. And when peace finally came, it came easier than anyone expected. Because by then, many soldiers on both sides had already discovered that their enemies were not monsters. They were just people. People who liked music and chocolate and pictures of their families. People who could share a drink and tell stories about home. People who, in another life, might have been friends. That was humanity's secret weapon. Not technology. Not tactics. Not strength or numbers. Just a simple, stubborn, wonderful insistence on treating enemies like potential friends. It was surreal. It was illogical. It was profoundly, beautifully human.